Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast and mine, the HudricoLive Show. Listen, today's episode, I'm bringing y'all an expert, somebody who knows the biz-naive. He knows how to make things happen. But like myself, he's a jack of all trades. He's a producer, a content creator, a Ross procedure survivor, a photographer. He has his own podcast channel we're going to talk about to give you even more tips. My guest today, Ryan Hafey. Ryan, what's good with you, baby?
What's up, Hudrico?
Listen, that's what I'm talking about, man. Listen, first off, thank you for taking the time. I know you're a busy man. Who knows? You could be flying across the country for the next big fight. I'm surprised we caught you on a Saturday, so you know we're going to run with it. With that being said, we won't waste any time. For my people who may not be familiar with you, who is Ryan Hafey?
That's a big question these days. I mean, I do a few things. I work in boxing. I work for Premier Boxing Champions, where I do a number of things from social media marketing to photography, content creation, a photographer and videographer and podcast host and producer on the side. I'm a father, got 3 kids, my husband, all those things. That's me.
So basically, when do you find time to sleep? Because apparently your schedule is chock full of activities.
It's something I've had to get better at. I do tend to just kind of go and work, and I've had to work on kind of setting some boundaries there. But I find the time. I work it in.
You know, that's something that I struggle with too. I always want to go and do. But you got to remember the things that matter, the things that goes on. Now, with that going, you said PBC. So you take photos for PBC. Now, guys, these ain't no regular photo. Hold on, let me edit some photos in here, man. Take a look at some of these shots, man. Ryan, to get these shots, you got to be pretty close to the action, man. First off, what is the feeling when you at one of these big fights like that?
It's pretty incredible. Obviously, depending on the magnitude of the fight, certain fighters bring in a certain kind of energy. And it also depends on the size of the guys. You got heavyweights in that ring, man. Just you can feel every punch that lands. It can be pretty intense.
So if you had to name one fight, like if you said, you know what, when I was at this fight, it just felt different. It just felt like there was something. I could feel it in the air. I'm that type situation. What comes to mind?
Probably Fury versus Wilder 3. That was one of the most explosive fights I've ever shot. One of the most explosive heavyweight fights in a long time. Just that was a back and forth war. I can also say Gervonta Davis, anytime he fights, he brings out so much energy. It's palpable throughout the entire arena. Every time he fights, it doesn't matter who, the energy's there. It's crazy.
Now, I wasn't gonna do this, but see, I'm a conversationalist. You throw me a bone, and then I gotta ask a question. Now, you talked about Gervonta Davis. Now, supposedly, I don't know if it's approved or it's happening, but there's supposed to be a big fight with him and Ryan Garcia. Now, I know we ain't talking boxing completely, but I just got to get your take on that real quick. Who you got winning?
Well, Gervonta, I'm biased to PBC. Ryan Garcia is sharp. He's a sharpshooter. He's a sniper. Gervonta Davis, though, man, he's something else. He's got an unmatched ring IQ, in my opinion. He's powerful. He's explosive. He can figure out. He can, and all it takes from him is just one shot. If I had to lean in one direction, I'm going to lean towards Tank.
Now, listen, I'm about to make some enemies out here because you know what? I'm riding with Ryan. I just feel like that hand speed. Listen, at the end of the day, it's going to be a phenomenal fight, and I'm pretty sure you see how I did that? We're going to be shooting it because you need somebody to carry your film while you taking all them shots, and that's what I'm here for, to carry the other extra cameras.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. My backpack weighs about 40 pounds on average.
Listen, okay. Broad shoulders here, man. It wouldn't be Hudrico if I didn't. Now, you're taking some great shots. You did some good things, but in life, we go through things. We go through certain things that we don't even understand when the time comes while we're going through it. With all the stuff, the podcasting, the creating, the fathering, the husbanding, the producing. Man, you had an open heart procedure. The Ross procedure, to be correct. First off, for you guys who don't know, the Ross procedure is basically an open heart surgery. I mean, this is when they're messing with the ticker, and that's never a good time, a easy time. So first off, how did this come about? How did you even realize that you needed this procedure?
Sure. I was born with a congenital heart defect. It's called a bicuspid aortic valve. If you picture a Mercedes logo, that's kind of what a normal heart valve looks like. It
Hmm.
has three leaflets that open and close to let blood through. I was born with two leaflets. So over time, that can make it harder for the heart to pass blood through the valve. Over time, the opening can get a little bit smaller, which is called stenosis. It's not all that uncommon. About 2% of the population have it. Most people need some sort of surgical intervention for it at some point. For me, it was something I knew that I've had since I was little
Hmm.
and that would eventually require surgery. And last year in September is just kind of when it came down to time to get it done.
So now, I, I don't know if you can say it's an advantage, but I guess it would be to know that you're going to need this procedure one day. It's not a question of sudden, like all of a sudden I have to have it right now. Having that wherewithal to know that this is something that needs to be done. How did that help you prepare for that situation? Because I'm pretty sure it still took a lot mentally to get prepared to
Yeah.
go into that underneath that knife.
Well, I mean, for most of my life, it didn't affect me. I mean, I played sports growing up. It wasn't until I was in my early 30s where some symptoms started to creep in. And even, within the few months leading up to the surgery, I'm still over here, pulling PRs in my home gym on deadlift and things like that. So it wasn't holding me back a whole lot. It always was kind of in the back of my mind, but it really didn't sink in until, my last cardiologist appointment before the procedure where he said, it's time to start the conversation about having this thing done and getting you fixed up. And that's when it really just weighed on me up until really the day of the procedure.
So how did you get through that? Because we got people who go through a lot, man. I always tell people, you think your situation is bad, somebody's got it worse. Some people complain about heartburn. You had a heart surgery. I mean, you got to put things in perspective. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it takes a village, it takes a system, takes a group of people, and not to mention you're a father. So as a father myself, I know if you tell me I got to go into a surgery that you know any surgery has a chance of being fatal. How did you mentally prepare for that as a man to be able to say, okay, family, I'm risking my life to save my life?
Yeah, y- having a strong support group helps. I was very fortunate in that I had a lot of people around me that cared about me and really wanted the best for me. My wife was my rock through the whole thing. Um, the ability to be able to talk about it openly with people to get things off of your chest was immensely
Mm,
important. And I had to think through things on my own as well. You have to process all the feelings about what could go wrong. You're gonna think about death as an option. Like it's out there. It's definitely possible. So you have to allow yourself to kind of to go through all those thoughts and feelings. Um, and for me, being able to process all those emotions, but then also have the people behind me supporting me, not just emotionally, but also with logistically
mm-hmm.
making sure everything is taken care of while I'm gone and while I'm recovering and in the procedure. By the time the day came to have the procedure, I was at peace, which was great.
That isn't important. I have another close friend of mine, like a brother of mine, who went through a heart procedure, and he said he was stressed about it. He had a lot of stuff going on, but he's a very religious person. He kind of gave it to God and said, "Hey, put me at peace." And when he was able to go in, he was at peace. So now you go through the surgery. You got some jewelry that's for a lifetime. Now you got that nice. Let me put that up there. Y'all take a look at this, man. This is not for the. You heard of scar face? This is scar chest. Listen, my man got the stitches to show it. Coming out of that procedure, where were you? What did you think? Did you feel that you were the same person? Did you feel stronger? Did you feel any different? Like, how do you come out of a major procedure like that?
It took me a while to get to feel like I was back to normal. I feel like that now. Obviously, it was a long recovery. The recovery was tough and it was slow, but it was very consistent. Every
Mm,
day you just kind of feel a little bit better. It went better than I expected. I honestly thought that when I got home, which was a roughly a week or so after the surgery, by the time I got home, I thought I would be mostly bedridden, at least for a couple weeks,
mm-hmm.
and have to have my meals served to me and all that kind of stuff. But really, I was able to get up and move around and relatively self sufficiently. Um, it was a struggle in the beginning for sure. just a lot of feelings of like, when is it gonna feel normal again? But like I said, just every day you get a little bit stronger, and now I feel great now. I'm back to exercising, lifting weights, running. I've been traveling again, so I've kind of achieved that sense of normalcy now, and it feels great.
So you kind of getting back, but listen, now hopefully the missus don't watch it. You probably rang that bell a couple times knowing you could have did it yourself, but just kind of getting a couple, I see it.
Yeah, but you know what? She appreciated that too. I think she says, she told me, you're such a strong person, you're so self-sufficient, but it was nice to be able to take care of you
Boom.
for a change. So it
ladies
worked
and
out.
gentlemen, that's the sound of when you got the right one. Congratulations, man. You got something going. So you get through that. So before we kind of transition away from that, because we want to get into your podcast, we want to get into what you do, and that's one of the main emphasis. But if you had to give a piece of advice to anybody going through a heart procedure, Ross procedure, open heart, just basically a major procedure, looking at it from your side, now that you're on the back side of that procedure, what piece of advice would you give to them?
Couple things. The one thing that was really beneficial for me was focusing on my health prior to surgery, just being as healthy as you can, despite whatever it is that you have that you're getting fixed. Um, I exercised a lot prior to surgery. I was strong, and that only aided in my recovery, my recovery as I went through it. The other thing I would say is allow others to help you. Allow people to support you, allow people to be there for you, and don't bottle things up. Let it all out, because it's a lot of emotions to process. And if you don't let that stuff out, and if you don't talk through it, it's just gonna destroy you. So,
Listen, he just gave it to you. Number one, get healthy even before. Start working out, getting yourself right. Number two, have people around to help. And number three, don't hold in those emotions, especially as men. A lot of times I'm tough. I can't talk about my feelings. But let me tell you something. Your feelings are real. The situations is real. Now let's talk about something else that's real. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going into what I like to call the creative control room. Ladies and gentlemen, my man Ryan also has a podcast. And the reason why I want to get with you, because since I do a podcast, I get so many people who come up to me like, oh, Hudrico, you have the best podcast in the whole wide world. Then after they say that part, then they typically say, I want to do a podcast. How do I start a podcast? What do I need to do? And I would tell them what I did, but I'm going to be honest with you people. I'm just learning this thing as I go. And one of the people that I learned from is on the screen right now. So why not talk to the master himself? So Ryan, first off, how did you come up with the idea to start the Creative Control Room?
It was kind of just a culmination, like a full circle type of thing for me. I actually started my very first podcast back in 2009, way back in the day when podcasting was just kind of in its infancy. I was interested in the format. Obviously, it was just audio only at the time, but I played around with that for a couple months. Then my interest just took me other places. Got interested in photography, then video, and over time, at a certain point, podcasting just started evolving, and video started becoming a component of that. And at a certain point, I just had all these skills that I had developed that really helped me when it came to kind of coming back to podcasting. And I just thought it would be an interesting format for me to kind of share some of the things that I've learned over the years. And it just sort of, that's what it turned into the Creative Control Room podcast.
Now, listen, he's being modest, y'all. This guy goes in detail with a lot of stuff that you can sit down and watch. And don't worry, where do I find it? Man, my man's on YouTube. Show the YouTube logo. TikTok, show the TikTok logo. Instagram. Listen, if you're looking, you ain't got to look far. But not too long ago, you put out a list. And this is one of the things I looked at. He put on a list of 9 things you need to basically get into the podcast. Now, we'll touch on them. And if you want to get more in detail, I definitely want to really push you guys over to his TikTok, his Instagram, so you can see these things, and his YouTube, because he goes more in depth. But that list, number 1, you said find a niche. 2, determine show format. 3, determine show style. Number 4 was branding. Number 5, build online presence. Number 6, determine content mix. 7, build a studio. Number 8, production schedule. And number 9, and probably the most important of them all, get started. Listen, now I asked this question, and this is actually therapy for me too, guys. When people say get a niche, me personally, I hate the word niche, because then I feel like I'm cornered. I feel like all I can do is talk about this. because I love motivation, but I love sports. I love boxing. And personally, I was thinking about having a podcast where I did everything. But why is it so important to have that niche?
If without a niche, you run the risk of casting a very wide net. And I went through this myself with my podcast. Like when I first started the Creative Control Room podcast, it was under a different name, and I covered way more subject matter than I do now. So actually only recently, the surgery put me out for a little while. I took about 6 or 7 months off from the podcast, but prior to the surgery, I was talking about everything from photography to video to audio to lighting, even FPV drone flying, and all that stuff is very interesting to me. But the problem was, there's not too many people out there that are interested in all of those
All of
things.
those.
So if I'm out here making an episode about flying a drone, I might get a couple people interested in drone flying to listen to that podcast. But if the next week I'm talking about, lighting tips, that person is not likely to stick around because he doesn't care.
He doesn't care about that.
So when you're casting such a wide net, if you don't niche down and focus on a singular topic, you run the risk of just people not sticking around because they're not interested consistently in the things that you're putting out.
Somebody asked me the other day, like Trevor, they said, what's your niche? And honestly, the more and more I think about it, my niche is just helping people. It's self-improvement. It's about getting people to where they need to get to and learning those things through other people's story, because I believe everybody has their own journey, but you never know that journey because you have to sit down and listen. And if you need journeys, like, subscribe, and share to HudricoLive. Put that on the bottom too. And the control room, we got them in. So number 2, you said determine show format. When you're talking about format, you're just talking about the flow of the show, how they get stuff going. Like, where we at with that?
Yeah, I mean, what's your show about? Like, how do you want to present yourself? There's so many different podcast formats out there, whether it's the interview style format, whether it's the talking head, you're talking directly to the camera. You just got to kind of think about, the content you're going to be putting out and how it's going to be best delivered to your potential audience. That's really what it comes down to.
We kept it simple. Determining the show style, I think those two kind of tie together a little bit, because the style is the look of what you want to do. Like, I love how you got the backlight going. You know what I'm saying? Me personally, I use my green screen, so everybody can have their own thing in regards to your style. Now we starting to get into the branding. Logos, inputs, stuff you putting out, pictures, headers. How important is it to have a consistent image when you start talking about branding?
It's very important. It's how people easily and instantly recognize you. I mean, just common example everybody uses is the Nike swoosh logo. Every time you see that logo wherever you are, there's an instant feeling that comes to your mind. But it doesn't just stop at imagery. It can be, when it comes to podcasting, audio signatures. So if you listen to my podcast, there's a consistent, there's the same, you hear the same sort of tone at the beginning of the show. In the intro, you hear the same tone as you transition between segments. Over time, the more people listen to that becomes easily, like Pavlov's dog. There's sort of a conditioned response. As soon as you hear that, you think a certain thing. So you want to create branding elements that are consistent with kind of your style and that can stick with people and resonate with people, and make you just easily recognizable when they hear it or see it.
And now for everybody that's listening, listen, I need you to understand, you don't have to get a podcast and start off as a pro. Myself, I can speak for, I learn every time. I learn every day. Like you just mentioned that sound. I do Instagram reels. I do these things. And now I started this thing where I want to make it consistent, where I say, Talktoemdrico. Well, it's just that tagline. It's something that goes on. Now, it doesn't change from my normal header, but it's just something to just try to make people remember to get that thing. So when you're talking about branding, you want to build that podcast, you have to be able to build your brand for people to be able to recognize you. Number 5, building your online presence. I think that's really self-explanatory. Nowadays, there's so many ways to kind of build that, whether that's Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. But you mentioned one thing in the tutorial video that I want to touch on, because a lot of people think a podcast is an audio. And I always tell people, hey, you want to be a guest on my podcast? But in actuality, it's more like a channel to me, more like my own talk show than it is a audio podcast. Do you recommend people kind of doing both with the video and the audio at the same time?
Absolutely. I mean, audio, to start in audio, like audio podcast discovery is not great. And there's so much competition, and that's really why podcasting has evolved so much over the years. It's because, it's become so overpopulated in the space. People are getting creative with podcasting and finding new ways to get their word out there. Video is really
The
a
way to go.
component of podcasting that you can't ignore these days, but it's not only is it now a part of podcasting, but it's crucial for discoverability. You expand your discoverability by orders of magnitude when you're out there on all these other platforms, putting content out on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram Reels and all that kind of stuff. So, if you want to increase your probability of people finding you, yes, definitely incorporate some video components when you can.
You know, he's hitting. Hey, listen, guys, we're giving you some gems right now, some straight jewels on how you want to get to your podcast. And don't worry, if you feel like we're going too fast or you ain't got it, the creative control room is here for you. It's going to be there. You can go back and watch this. We're going to share this on both platforms. So there's ways for you to get this material if we're going a little too fast. Because I understand, you know, I got a little draw to me. Now, this is the one I think a lot of podcasters fear, and this is what scares people when it comes to podcasting. When you say build your studio, because when people think build a studio, they think time to make money and spend money, because you don't just get on YouTube and become YouTube famous. It doesn't work that way. Trust me, I've been going. It's coming. When you say build the studio, I know you say you use Sony cameras. I got a Sony too. You know what I'm saying? People talk about the microphones and all this stuff makes a difference. But speak to the person who is, I just want to start a podcast. What are the bare necessities you think somebody needs to say, I want to start next week?
You know, it's interesting because it's one of the most common questions that I get when people talk about wanting to start a podcast. It's what gear do I need? And it's really not the right question to ask. You don't need to get a Sony camera. You don't need to get expensive lighting. You don't need all this stuff. Like you can start with what you have. And remember first that the foundation of podcasting is audio. So if you really want to if you really want to invest in something, invest in good audio. Maybe consider getting a better microphone than what you have. You probably don't want to be recording directly into your phone. You know, you don't necessarily have to get a Shure SM7B like we have. You can get some, you know, like a Blue Yeti USB microphone or something like that that plugs right into your computer. I would say start there, but outside of that, you don't have to use a Sony. You can use your iPhone camera. In fact, I would suggest, you know, if you're considering upgrading your gear, get a better light source before you get a better camera. Effective lighting is going to improve the look of your video better than getting a new camera by far. So I would say start with what you have, emphasis in audio, and then just build as you go. As you start to learn how things work together and how to improve the quality, you'll start to realize what tools could help up your game. And then as you go along and you're able to afford it, just start incorporating it.
Now, listen, he's hit you on some great things. And when you mentioned lighting, you know, I got light there, a light behind me. It's all a learning process because I still don't, listen, ladies and gentlemen, still don't know if I have the lights in the right spot. But you know what? It looks good to me on my screen, so I go with it. Hopefully, it looks good for y'all. But, you know, I want to get that nostalgic look you got going, but that comes with time. And if I want to learn, I'm going to tune into the creative control room because they got me. You see what I'm saying? See, that was a nice little plug right there. Now, here's the next one. These last three, the last three nuggets you dropped to me are the most important one. And this is the one that we all struggle with. I even struggle with. Production schedule. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you a secret. Don't tell. Listen, a matter of fact, I'm going to title this the secret to podcasting that nobody wants to tell you. You don't just record and it comes out perfect. There's work that goes into this. I don't think they understand that, Ryan. The work that goes into the editing, the chipping, the volume, the this, the that. Talk to you about how I know you put your production schedule in the video that you put, but how important is it to have that schedule and most importantly, impose that powerful C word of consistency?
Yeah, I think if you're anything like me, if you don't have deadlines imposed on you, either by yourself or by someone else, chances are it's going to slip through the cracks. For me, I need a deadline. I'm not one of these kinds of people that can just say, you know, I'm just going to record a podcast and put it out whenever I get a chance to, because if that's the case, I'm just not going to do it. For me, I think it was important for me to figure out a schedule that would work realistically with me. I mean, I do weekly right now, which is even still a little bit of a stretch for me, but I'm doing it because I'm passionate about it, because I want to build something out of this. But um, just that's it's everyone's different, of course, but if you want to stay consistent, you really need to find a schedule that's going to work for you, and you just got to be dedicated and determined to stick to it.
Now, if you're looking for an example schedule, once again, head over to it. I know I keep telling y'all this, and I usually don't drive people away from my pocket. That's not what we're doing here, but I would like to share goodness. He has it's a whole TikTok video on it too. He's made clips of it. So it'll tell you what an example schedule that he uses or something you may be able to use. And then number 9, get started. Listen, I can tell you for myself, you just got to do it. You got to let go of what everybody thinks. Oh, what if nobody listens? Or what if I don't get the views? When I first started, Ryan, I was so pissed because I'm like, I just worked hard. I got Sean Porter. Why ain't everybody even watching this? I got Terrence Crawford. Why people not watching this? I got this person, that person, because I was trying so hard to get huge names, because I'm like, if I get a big name, everybody's going to watch. Some people are worried because they won't get the views. Now, for myself, at this point that I'm in now, if I get one person that view it or nobody that views it, it's what I love to do. And I keep telling myself, one day, the world's going to realize, yo, this dude Hudrico got some stuff, because the content never dies, people. It's still going to be there. So what would you tell that person who's afraid or hesitant to get started?
I think it's important to remember that it's a long game. I think there's kind of this sentiment out there now, like people see these overnight successes on TikTok and stuff like that, and they think that that's kind of what a lot of people aim for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, I just need that one big hit. I'm gonna hit it big, and then that's gonna just push me off into the stars. Doesn't work like that 99.9% of the time. You have to be, if you want to get into podcasting, you have to understand that it's a long game. You're going to have to put some time into it. You're going to have to build a bank of content that people can rely on. Because even think of it like this: if you post a podcast episode or a video, or whatever, and it goes viral,
They want more.
Yeah, people want more. But and then if you don't have anything to, if you don't have a bank of content already out there that people can, like if you go viral, people are going to be like, oh, who is this person? I want to see more from them. And then they're going to go and look, and they're going to be like, oh, they don't have anything. And then they just go away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost better that you don't go viral right away, because you're not prepared for it. So you got to be ready for the long game. You got to be ready to put in the hours, put in the work, get that bank of content in place, and just stay consistent with it.
Now, listen, for all of you who are looking, I mean, if I looked at, I think you have 115 episodes of your podcast. So there's some content there for you people. Old Hudrico got plenty of videos for you. So we ready to go viral, just so you know. We are ready for you. So go ahead and click, like, share, subscribe, become a Patreon, hit the websites, all that good stuff. But the biggest thing and the biggest key is getting started. So now, after doing podcasting and you got the control room going, I love the videos that you're putting in, and you're right. The branding that you're doing, I think, is great, because as soon as I hear that sound, I'm waiting for that picture to see you looking up. It's almost like my brain is trained to look for it now. So it is working. But what would you say would probably be the 3 best takeaways or 3 biggest positives to being a podcaster?
Speaking for myself personally, I think one of the big drivers for me of wanting to start the podcast in the first place is it's a way for me to continue to hone my skills. I'm always, I call it the creative control room, because I'm always in here using this space to hone the skills, but also I'm also tweaking things, tweaking lighting, tweaking my camera settings. So it's a great way to kind of, if you're interested in the space, in video, in just podcasting in general, you can kind of learn about it as you go. Another thing is those skills can transfer. Again, if that's a space that you're interested in, I've used the skills that I've obtained kind of working on these things to, I did a TikTok live stream for Billboard Music Awards last year. And that was all as a result of all the work that I had done with this podcast. And, ultimately, I think the last thing would be it opens a lot of doors. It opens, there's a lot of potential for new opportunities if you put the work in. And it's opened a lot of doors for me. We haven't talked about this yet, but another podcast that I produce is Sean Porter's podcast, the Porter Way Podcast. That wouldn't have been possible had I not been in here putting in the work on my own. So ultimately, it's just been great for me all around.
Now, it's a great segue of something I want to get into. The Porter Way Podcast, which is definitely a friend to the Creative Control Room and to HudricoLive, man. Yep. Sean, Ant, I still miss my man Carson, man, Mr. Zytel. Listen, those gentlemen are doing a great job. I mean, and some of the people they're getting going, and it's when you talk about the long game, you look at where they are now. It's really starting to hit to where they wanted to get to, and it took some time. It took a lot of late nights in the basement at Sean's house for them to get to that standpoint. So for my podcasters who are out there, it does happen. You just got to be willing to put in the work, and you got to understand everything you want in life is on the other side of hard, and it's going to be some hard work to get there. So when you start working on these other podcasts and doing these things, does this all lead back to helping you with your own podcast? Like, once again, is it another one of those situations where one hand is washing the other?
It's all about growth. I mean, obviously with the Porter Way Podcast, one of the great things about it is just being able to work with some really cool people. I've known Sean, met Sean first back in 2014, and now I get a chance to work with him on a consistent basis. And like you said, Carson, Sean, those are all great dudes. But yeah, it's for me as someone who wants to expand, my podcast production abilities and, potentially make that more of a career move for me down the road. Yeah, it's benefiting me, of course. Keeps my skills sharp, and it's just a lot of fun, man.
Now, I'm just gonna go ahead and put it here on record. You are more than welcome, and you want to be the old HudricoLive producer. We may have an opening for you, man. I don't think I got the salary that Sean do, but I got a lot of love for you. How about that? I don't know. Can love pay a bill? I don't know if it can or not, but hey, you always welcome.
Not currently accepting love as payment, but we'll talk offline. Yeah.
Sounds like a plan. Well, listen, first off, guys, I hope you guys got something for my final time out today. You talked to a young man who said, hey, I have a passion, and I'm going to use my passion to get to where I want to get to. And a lot of times we don't like to listen when other people are giving us great advice. He has some phenomenal things for you to check out to help you get to your lighting, your photography, even got some drone stuff like he mentioned before, but not just that, how to build a podcast. But to do that, you got to be willing to listen and stop, to talk less and listen more to get to that standpoint. Now, he also went through a major procedure in his life. This is something that most people can go through and never respond and never be the same person. But he's taken that hardship, he's taken that destruction, and turned it into creation. And now he's moving forward. So the message today, people, is nothing stops you unless you let it. Nothing will hold you back unless you allow it to. So it's up to you what you're going to do. We like to thank our guests. Man, hey, Ryan, man, thank you for going on. Look, just in case they ain't been paying attention to the 700 times I said it, where can people find you if they want to follow and get more information and get that stuff going?
I'm on social media at Ryan Hafey on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, I'm wherever you listen to your podcast, find me out there, or you can just search TCCRP on YouTube and you will find me. But yeah, come say hi.
Ladies and gentlemen, and with that, that is another episode of HudricoLive in the books.